Alright, welcome back to Nicholas Comic Corner Classic Non-Classics. This is episode number 1454 and Doubleshot number 1358. Now, I got two Marvel trades here. One, of course, is a book that collects issues that came back in the 60s. The other one was that became actually in the last 10 years. Alright, first up it is... And this is what it's called. Mighty Marvel Masterworks Amazing Spider-Man with Great Power. Yeah, it's the first volume of this trade series. Yeah, I noticed though this actually is... The size of this one seems like it's smaller than the Epic Collections. Now, I thought this was Francis Ford who does this cover. No, it's actually Michael Cho. I was thinking that because the color scheme is very similar to that. So yeah, that's Michael Cho's cover there. This book collects Spider-Man's very first appearance from Amazing Fantasy 15 and the first 10 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man ongoing series. Yep, the first 10 issues. Of course, obviously 15 has been talked about to death, especially since Lynn Carr did a review of it about 5 or 6 years ago. I know he did reviews. It was one of his earliest ones he did for Secret Orders month because, well, people know about it. Yep, it's a very noteworthy one. People know about it. And the fact that, well, most of this particular one has been adapted. One thing people don't talk about Spider-Man is the fact that aside from being a superhero, he was getting into show business. And then became basically issue 1, where in the case of Jameson, he published an article, Spider-Man's a menace, and apparently because of that, Spider-Man lost all of his gig money he was getting. I'm like, really, Jameson? You have any proof that he is a menace? Of course, also, he demanded to be arrested and prosecuted for daring to rescue his son. Yes. In a bit of overtop fashion for that particular Amazing Spider-Man number 1. Now, the Chameleon is also making... Now, the thing is, Amazing Spider-Man number 1... Now, I should talk about first appearances here. Amazing Fantasy 15, first appearance of course, Spider-Man, May Parker, Ben Parker, who actually dies in the opening issue. I'm trying to think, who else was it? Oh yeah, the Burglar, Flash Thompson. Yes, Flash Thompson, who's basically a bully here. And this book is also noteworthy the first appearance of the Web Shooters, the Spider-Man costume, and Crusher Hogan, who made one appearance in the comics after this. He returned back in the 80s, where Spider-Man did not remember him at all, but Crusher Hogan did, as being his first opponents. Yep. As for Amazing number 1, the first story is debut of two characters, J. Jonah Jameson and his son, John Jameson. Now, I did point out to Octavius, that was actually partially correct, that Daily Bugle did not make his debut in Amazing Spider-Man. Yes. Because people think that Daily Bugle is a competition with Spider-Man, or occasionally with Daredevil, or in the case of Carol Danvers. Well, I was partially right. It made its debut in the issue of Fantastic Four. Issue number 2. Not 3, it was actually out by that. Yes, issue number 2. That was the first appearance of the Daily Bugle. They had a reporter make a show up in that appearance. Yep. Now, the backup story has Spider-Man's very first encounter with the Fantastic Four. Something that became an integral part for him throughout decades. Yes, first of many hero team-ups he's had. And thanks to these early issues, he gets a chance to meet certain people. Like in the case of the first issue, meeting the Fantastic Four. Offering him, remember Fantastic Four for a salary? He says, no. And they say, no, we basically have our money go to inventions. And how are you able to support basically how you live? Because it's like non-profit. They probably need some money also to, pay for food and stuff like that. Yeah. And then, of course, he tangles with the Chameleon. Yes, he makes his debut here. And I should point something out about the Chameleon, about his debut look about him. Where he has this look about him that actually would never return after this. Let's see if we can find him here. Look at this look for the chameleon. Like, he wears his jacket with the switch-out mask and the goggles. Now, the white mask, that part of him will still remain. He changed his jumpsuits over the years. Later on, he decided to do this thing where, like he did in the animated series, where he had this belt buckle, and by looking at somebody, he simply just changed their appearance. Here, he made actual mask. Yeah, he did that briefly, and then, of course, when he returned just after 600, when he decided to get this, he decided to pose as Peter to sleep with his roommate, who was a woman. Yes, a woman. Yeah, so the chameleon slept with Peter Parker's roommate. Though, the thing about the chameleon is that it's never been revealed over the years of what his face actually looks like. Because it hints that his face is really ugly. And this has been common since his debut. I mean, take a look at this first issue. I mean, that white mask you see him wearing underneath the slip-on mask he wears. Yeah, he wears that up until present day. Like, why the heck does he not take a thing off? Why we can't see his face? Yeah, that's something that's Stan Lee established. Now, the chameleon himself would not become a big player a lot over the years. But he is a big player in the current story of Amazing Experiment, The Chameleon Conspiracy. Issue number 2 is the debut, of course, The Vulture and the Terrible Thinker. Yep. Oh yeah, this is also the Vulture story is a story where Peter got first hired by J. Jonah Jameson to become a freelance photographer. That starts that plot thread. That mostly continues up until about 2007. Yeah, I'd say about 2007 is when they finally decided to stop that. And it seems as though a lot of the time Peter Parker was looking for a job half the time. And then eventually he landed at, well, Horizon Labs. Thanks, of course, to Marla Jameson. Well, thanks to being distant relatives due to the fact that May Parker married J. Jonah Jameson's father. Which, yeah, he was a creation of modern day. There was no mention of his father prior to that. Yep. Yep. Now, second story, here, look, here's the Terrible Tinkerer. Now, the thing about this story is, unlike the Vulture, who actually returned after this, not the case of the Terrible Tinkerer. I mentioned to Tivia, he does have something in common with the Space Phantom, where he does not make his return for over 100 issues. Like, after this story, he does not make his first on-screen appearance, like, on-panel appearance, until issue 180. Long after Stan Lee had stopped writing the book. I believe it was Lane Wein was writing the book at the point. Yeah, he brought him back, and there was this little plot thread at the very end of the book. And look, I almost forgot to point this out, though. There are aliens in this issue. Yes, aliens. Yeah, and this issue has had a suffered bit of retcons. Look, we have possibly the Tinkerer being an alien. Well, okay, explain the retcons. First thing, the retcon for this story is the Tinkerer being an alien. Okay, that proved to be actually a lie. He was just a ruse. As for aliens themselves, well, they didn't make the return until the issue of SpiderMan in the 80s. When I mentioned, oh yeah, it's been 2 years since I fought you guys. Like, oh yeah, and it turns out, though, get this. And this is the establishing via another retcon that apparently Mysterio was one of these aliens. Yeah, apparently these were actually guys in costumes. This fantastic looking spaceship. Yeah, that spaceship. Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, they retconned it later that somehow these were all actors in suits. And the fact, in the very same mission, they retconned that Mysterio was one of these aliens. And you're probably thinking, really? Yes, really. So yeah, the story itself is canon, except they retcon just two things. The thing with the Tinkerer and with the aliens. Yeah. Issue 3 is the debut of Dr. Octopus. Yep, and I did point this out at the Tivia, and this actually is true. Dr. Octopus apparently knew about Spider-Man before he first met him. Yeah, that was the first time that ever happened. Yep. And look, the Spidey signal, something he doesn't use hardly anymore. And look, this looks familiar. Dr. Octopus putting on, well, the Octavius putting on a harness, doing experiments, and an explosion, and he gets had the arms grabbed to his body. Now you're probably thinking, wait, that sounds very similar to what they did for the movie version. That's indeed true, except this one's evil. Yep, except there's a couple things I should point out about his harness. His arms remain mostly the same over the years, except the harness itself will look completely different later on. And the little collar thing that's part of the harness, that actually get removed. Yes, in later appearances, that would get removed. So the arms itself would remain. At some points, the harness itself gets removed and gets moved on its own. Yep. Oh yeah, this also is the first issue where Spider-Man suffers his very first defeat. He was going to give it up. At this point, it was the first of many times he basically tried to quit being Spider-Man. And after a speech from the Human Torch, he basically is like, screw quitting. Like, then he had a rematch with Dr. Octopus and won. And then basically, like, and of course Human Torch basically is like, oh, and of course Spider tells that apparently his confidence basically, you sort of his confidence, like, huh? Really? I don't get it. Yep, this is well before he finds out that Peter Parker is in fact Spider-Man. A long time before that. Yep. Issue 4, the debut of the Sandman. Now, this action, I should point out a couple of instances. I did point out the tibia during our history of Amazing Spider-Man, the Stan Lee years. Now, in the case of Dr. Octopus, his origin story was basically how he got the way he was. That was told during story. Issue 4 is the first time they actually saw it via flashback. Yep, first time I ever did it. And this story is quite hilarious in how Spider-Man defeats the Sandman by a vacuum cleaner. Yep. Yeah. But a lot of this I've most discussed already on my Comic Book Telling Live. Just basically a summary here. I might bring up some stuff that I may have forgotten to talk about here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have basically a start of something that would come play in a later issue. Peter Parker trying to get into a fight with Flash Thompson. Now, issue 5. This actually is the first time Spider-Man fought a person who was not a member of his Rogues Gallery, Dr. Octopus. Not Dr. Octopus. Dr. Doom. Who is considered to be I think he's supposed to be one of the top 3 strongest villains in the Marvel Universe. Yep. And he wants Spider-Man to join him to destroy Fantastic Four. That's really just this issue. One thing I forgot to talk about when it came to this issue here was that Flash Thompson, this is actually referenced also in later issues as Spectacular Spider-Man, where Flash Thompson basically is a big fan of Spider-Man. This is before he found out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Where he said they dressed up as him and of course walk around. And of course, Dr. Mystico thinks he is, well, Spider-Man. And of course, he kidnaps him. And he have him team up with Spider-Man to beat Dr. Doom. Later on, this basically comes in later when it comes to his old girlfriend from Vietnam. Yeah, they mentioned this issue. It's a weird issue, but it's nice. Issue 6, the first appearance of the Lizard. Yep. Also first appearance of Martha and Billy Connors. Yep. Yeah, his whole thing about taking over the world is that basically a lot of stuff is quite interesting. Now, basically, issue 2 of Amazing Spider-Man, I did mention this also. The issue 2 was also the first appearance of Betty Brant in the comics. And later on, they did attempt to start a romance between Peter and Betty Brant, but they broke up. Yep. And of course, also, they try to have Peter hook up with Liz Allen. That was technically his first love, but it never went anywhere. We have issue 7, the first ever villain return in the comics, the Vulture. Yep, the Vulture. Where he has a rematch with the guy, first of many different rematches, but this is actually the first time he actually returned. Yeah, and I did point this out to Octavia that, well, Vulture was the first person at this point to have the first ever return of a character. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a little interesting little issue. 8, of course, is the first appearance of the living brain. Yes. Oh, yeah, and the whole thing of tackling the Human Torch, I kind of forgot about this story. Yeah, that happened in a backup story. Yes, a backup story when these two fought. Then he ends up fighting the Fantastic Four. Those hilarious bit at the end where Spider-Man basically draws a webbing heart for Sue Storm. I thought was so hilarious. And despite the fact that, in case you're curious though, no, Peter Parker never fell in love with Sue Storm. Despite the fact how much of a beautiful woman Sue Storm is, never fell in love with her. Basically, just to poke fun of the Human Torch. Yep, that was really the whole point of that. Yeah, this issue was just kind of weird. Issue 8. It's the Living Brain, a character who, after this issue, did not make his return to Web of Spider-Man 38. It was after Peter Parker graduated from high school. Yep. Issue 9, the debut of Electro. Yep. And of course, Jameson thought Spider-Man was dressed up as Electro. Yep. 10, of course, is the debut of the Enforcers. Yep. But this is all classic stuff for Spider-Man. I give this book a 10 out of 10 because it's just classic. Alright, moving on to something I haven't talked about in a long time. We have the Miracleman, Book 2, the Red King Syndrome. This collects issues 5 through 10 of Miracleman. Yes, written by the original writer, aka Alan Moore. Yeah, this is the last trade to talk about when it comes to his time on, well, writing Miracleman. Because starting with basically what was book 4, The Golden Age, that is Neil Gaiman. Which, I have not got my hands on that book yet. Yep, the thing with these issues is that I should also point out the artwork on these issues. Now, of course, this is all Stanley, so we'll discuss a little bit about that. This book, of course, by Alan Moore, the original writer, with Cat Von Wood, artwork by Alan Davis, John Ridgway, Rick Bach, Ryan Brandt, and Chuck Austin. Yes, Chuck Austin. The same guy behind Uncanny X-Men from I think it was 410 to about 450, I think it was. No, it was 441, I think it was. And of course, he had a run for Superman. And Chuck Austin himself was also notorious, where his previous career he was drawing porn. Yes. Though, this is not porn. This is basically very somewhat graphic story. We have Miracleman just dealing with various things like a pregnant wife who later gives birth in here. Yes. And wow, it's like, because of the fact it's a mature book, let's show a very graphic birthing scene. Oh my gosh. It's like, oh wow. And let's have Miracleman kill a lot of people. Yes, Miracleman become a murderer. Despite the fact he's supposed to be a superhero. Yeah, he kills people by crushing their skulls. Yes, seriously, that's what he does. And, well, there's also appearance by young Miracleman. There's no appearance by Miracle Woman in here. Yeah, she's not in here at all. She appears in the latest trade. And here's the thing about his baby. Right after this baby is born, he says his first word, "Mama." Yes, he seriously says that. And he's only been born for less than a minute. He's already speaking. His mother is shocked to see that. He's already speaking, and she just gave birth to him. Yeah, and also we have some people from this government project, this German group, really want to get their hands on Miracleman's baby for some reason. Also, for some reasons, maybe you have Miracleman be a very slick guy. For some reason, when he's in reporter mode, he looks like this. He has a bit of a, let's say almost like a beer gut. He's still kind of thin, but he has a bit of a beer gut. This is what he looks like when he's not Miracleman for some reason. Yes. We have appearance by Kid Miracleman and Young Miracleman. Yep. But this story is actually pretty good. I like it. But, man, that graphic birthing scene. Like, was that really necessary, Alan Moore? Really? And this is the end of Alan Moore's time on the book, because as soon as basically, well, not basically, he did do 6 more issues, but after the next story arc, he handed off Neil Gaiman, who did it even after that. I'm going to give this book a 9 out of 10. It's a good book, but man, that graphic birthing scene. Okay, as for my final thoughts on the Alan Moore run for Miracleman, these books are good. Yes, the Miracleman stuff is really good. If you're into stuff like Miracleman, you might actually enjoy this. Yes, from what I heard about Miracleman himself, that originally he was called Marvel Man. Yes, he was called Marvel Man. And you're probably thinking, if he's called Marvel Man, why is he called Miracleman? Well, there's a legal reason why. There was a lawsuit over the guy. Yep, a lawsuit. And he basically was a character exclusive to British comics. And then eventually Marvel got their hands. They actually purchased the rights to this character. And of course his other characters for his family. For some reason they have reprinted the older Miracleman books. I mean, there's like a good chunk of them. Like, oh my gosh, there's like a lot of them. Like, it is shocking that this particular books basically has never been reprinted in the trade. Like, yeah, his early appearances, as far as I can tell, has never been collected in trade. I think they may be reprinted in these issues, but not really, no. Yeah. But not much else to say about Miracleman. It's good, definitely. So yeah, that's it for Stick Review. And in case you're curious to the stuff, like I keep saying, I will do like Two Little Dark at some point. I probably will do it today, because I got time. Okay? So it's next video. Bye.